My name is Mitch Manning. I'm one of the organizers here at the Joyner Institute, and I want to welcome all of you to the Writers Workshop 30th Annual Writers Workshop Poetry and Music Celebration. Give yourself a round of applause. We're thrilled that you all can be here tonight. You just saw a little presentation of some of the poets and musicians and performers who will be on stage tonight. We have a really, really exciting show for you all, and I hope you all enjoy it. I'd like to extend a big welcome especially to our faculty of the Writers Workshop, to the participants, to the warrior writers, and to many of our veterans who are in the crowd tonight. I just want to give a couple of thank yous before I introduce our Master of Ceremonies tonight, who's going to guide us through the show. You guys all have the program, and that's generally a little bit of a set list that we have going. So this show would not have been possible without the help of many, many, many different folks. I want to thank especially Tom Johnston of the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. He's really been instrumental in helping us get here. Tom is one of the true, art creators in this city and really makes a lot of great art happen here. I want to thank some of our sponsors, including Grub Street, the Boston Poet Laureate Program, and some of our workshop sponsors, the Brighton Marine Health Center, the Mass Cultural Council, the Boston Cultural Council. I also want to thank Jill Manikis and the fine people of the Boston Public Library. How about this space, right? Many of us remember what the Boston Public Library used to look like, so this is pretty rad. And thank you especially to our lovely volunteers and Joyner staff, Aaron and Renata and Aaron and Huma and so many people. Really great. Couldn't have done it without them. Thanks also to John Mulrooney, who's helped us with the AV, and to Ann Lawyer of the Fort Point Theater Company, who helped us bring in that art that you saw outside. That was female Iraqi art by Asma El-Hassan and Elham, two folks who we collaborated with on a project called the Boston to Basra Project. So thank you to Ann and to John. And a special thanks, of course, to Kevin Bowen for his special leadership and inspiration for 30 years of the Joyner Writers Workshop. Building a decades-long community inspired around the cause of writing and responding to the injustice of war and working together to build peace. And then just one last announcement, please join us at the after party down the street over at the Poor House, just 3 blocks that away between Gloucester and Hereford over on Boylston Street. So come on out for some free food and a cash bar. If y'all have cell phones, if you want to turn those off right now, that would be great. Tonight's event is a celebration of 30 years of the Joyner Institute Writers Workshop. 30 years of teaching, learning, writing, social conscience, and of creative responses to the trauma of war. The show tonight is designed to feature 3 decades of Joyner Workshop legacy. Over the night, you will hear voices from the many decades of the Joyner Workshop, along with music from 3 countries, to give a sense of the communities that the Joyner Center, now the Joyner Institute, has engaged with, namely the country of Vietnam and Iraq. To lead us through tonight's program, we are thrilled to have our MC, Regie Gibson, to guide us through the show. Regie Gibson, he's an all-star, award-winning poet, a songwriter, author, educator. He's performed around the world, been featured on NPR and Def Jam Poetry on HBO, and Reggie's a longtime friend of the Joyner Center. Please give a very warm welcome for Regie Gibson. Thank you, my friend. Enjoy.
When they speak of our time, they will say it was a time when truth abandoned our words and running sores passed for a false prophet's mouth. When television super shrinks conducted group psychosis and drugged up teenagers lived in a haze of oblivion. They will say this was the time we hamster wheeled inside the jagged jaws of death that hovered above us licking its murderous lips. That this was when blues and jazz meant nothing to the asterisk of adolescent faces lost in the footnote of pop cult hysteria. They will say this was the hour of the falling towers, when halos of metal rained screams on our cities and smoke blackened the skies until the sun was a jaundiced memory. They will say that this was a time when English spoken with the wrong accent brokered an uncertain fate, and both red and blue states forgot that God is colorblind. They will say this was a time morality drank from Hollywood's hemlock, when intellectual cowards bowed to the powers and promises of gold. They will say that a horrible darkness whispered our names until we closed our eyes and trembled with fear, trembled until we became the darkness we feared. They will say this was a time of war in the name of terror, in the name of freedom, for the sake of peace, so there would be no more war in the name of. They will say this was a time of shrunken bellies and refugees, and of blood being plagued by the ache of disease, and of islands floating away on rafts made of human bodies. They will say this was the dark night of the bullet bite, the misogynist lyric, and the anti-truth, that this was when we all danced to the beat of our children's cracking skulls. But let them also say that this was a time we fought against a self-inflicted genocide, that this was when something transcendent and human in us stood up to resist the Orwellian jackboot, that finally in the rumbling throat of Ray Charles we heard what America could become, that in the bite of Mark Twain's wit we finally gapped the punchline, finally realized that manifest destiny could no longer patch the human-sized hole in our history. Let them say this was when the woman stepped forward declaring, "I am that I am," and we men broke ourselves of the need to break women. Let them say that this was the time we struggled against fist and fallacy of lawyers abandoning courtrooms to plant wheat in Kenyan fields, that this was when truth found our tongues again and we were unafraid to open our mouths and speak it. Let them say this was when we said yes again and again and again to the pages of Pablo Neruda's verses resounding with peace for the coming twilight, peace for the bridge, peace for the wine, peace for the letters that seek us and rise in our blood, peace for the city in the morning when bread rises, peace for the ashes of our fallen, peace for all the living, peace for all waters and lands. Let them say that we were a people of faith in a time when faith was in crisis, that we were a people of hope when it made no sense to hope at all, that we still believed love could be as simple as the images our ancestors painted on caves, images birthing our first human songs like water and flower, the sun, moon, and star, and wind and rain and river and fire, because even as earth shook beneath our shoes, we knew there were things that would not change. Let them say this was a time we desperately reached through the malignant maelstrom of electronic chaos, reached through the mad and maddening invocations of the soulless who profit from the poisonous pathology of our time. And we found others there with our own eyes and our own hands, reaching back. Thank you. For 30 years, the Joyner Center has brought together veteran poets, writers, journalists, and community members to write about and share their experiences of war and conflict. And the workshop for the years has provided a forum and an occasion for writers whose lives, loved ones, and societies have been impacted by violent conflict over the past 30, 50 years or so. Originally, this was conceived as a veteran writers' workshop. The concept of veteranhood has for over 30 years, due to Kevin Bowen's leadership, expanded to include various kinds of veterans, those in uniform and out, civilians, refugees, veteran family members, witnesses to war's atrocities. And the next two people who I'm going to introduce, the first two readers that we're going to have, are people who I think exhibit for us in their work not only the harshness of what it means to go through war, to go through atrocity, but also the beauty that can come out of it, the beauty of the soul that can't be touched as a result of that kind of atrocity. They are two gems who I love having them anytime I have them together in the city of Boston. The first one I'll introduce and the second one I'll introduce, and they will come up one after the other. But please give each one of them a rousing round of applause. The first, of course, is a person who is one of the first writers, the first workshop leaders here at the Joyner Center. Most recent, his collection of poetry, his 13th, by the way, so the man is not lazy, as we can see. The Abundance of Nothing was a finalist for the 2013 Pulitzer Prize in Poetry. He won the Isabella Gardner Award in Poetry from BOA Editions, and they will also publish his new collection, On the Shores of Welcome Home, in the fall of 2018. I want you guys to give a lot of love to the guy when he comes up, but give him a little bit of love now for Bruce Weidel, if you wouldn't mind. And I just want you to get some pre-love, Bruce. Just some pre-love, okay? You'll get more love after you. And next, after him, we will be bringing up a person who is the gem of Boston, Danielle Legros-George. She is the poet laureate of the city of Boston, author of 2 collections of poetry. Both are killer. Give them both if you don't have them. She is a professor in the Creative Arts and Learning Division of Lesley University and has received numbers of awards. And so following Bruce will be the beautiful and transcendently intelligent Danielle Legros-George. Bruce Weigel.